Hey guys, how are you? Good, thank God. So I'm gonna try to make this as simple as possible. I will talk to you guys just like I speak to any of my patients, and there's gonna be a lot of big words which you guys are gonna see around, and the reason why I put them up there is not just for the medical practitioners, but when you're doing your own research, you will see this and you'll be like, what the heck? And then usually my patients would stop just like mid-page and then they're like, eh. And then they usually call me. So hopefully by the time that I leave here, you guys will be able to look this up online. You guys would be able to look at any product, let's say CBD products. You guys would be able to look at any CBD product and you would know what's in it, what does it mean, what's an isolate, what's a spectrum, what's a whole plant extract, what's a full spectrum, what's a broad spectrum. All right, so hopefully by the time we're done here, I'll show you guys what most of my patients are on, all right, that has worked for us for the last 2.5 years with Dr. Mena. And we have formulated some stuff where it was not just figured out, because some of this stuff does not exist on the market. Actually, most of it doesn't exist on the market, and that's why a compounding pharmacy is needed. So without further ado, let's just start a little bit, and you guys probably know a bunch of this stuff, okay? So the main things that we're gonna talk about today is 3 types of treatments, right? I'm not gonna talk much about them. They're composed actually in our protocol with 4 medicines, with 4 medications. So you guys know already about the ketamine, all right? How many people know about dextromethorphan? With a raise of hands. Thank you, Dr. Wu. Yes, very good. But how many people have been on dextromethorphan? Yeah, that is a cough medicine, you're right. You're right. So dextromethorphan is the same cough medicine you would find in Robitussin DM. That's what DM stands for, dextromethorphan. And it's the same stuff that you would find in Mucinex DM. Again, the dextromethorphan. All right, then we're gonna talk about LDN. I'm not sure how many people heard about LDN. How many people are on LDN? Okay, all right, cool deal. Then we're gonna talk about CBD. This is the main therapy that most of my patients are on, all right? And then we're gonna go through them real quick, and we're gonna go from there on to see how did everybody respond, what side effects you might get from it, what you might expect it to come in. If you're ever given a prescription, how do you wanna ask for it? What dosage do you expect yourself to see? When do you stop? When do you start? And we'll go from there. Fair enough? Cool. So the first thing is ketamine, right? Most of everybody here knows about ketamine. All right? Huge, big structure. We love ketamine. Why do we love ketamine? Ketamine as analgesia is good, but as anesthesia is amazing. So the biggest problem for an anesthesiologist is when you put somebody down, the biggest problem that you're worried about that they would stop breathing, right? And ketamine was amazing in that because it did not actually depress the breathing that bad at all. So what happened is when it got introduced into 1970, ketamine was one of the main analgesic drugs that was actually used in Vietnam. Because I can use it right there and then, and that person would not actually stop breathing on us. All right, so it helped in the analgesics there and actually helped very nicely to put people down for surgeries without depressing their breathing. But then from there on, we discovered that ketamine went in and modulated something called the NMDA receptor in our brain. N-methyl D-aspartate, NMDA, all right? And that receptor from there on went in and modulated down the pain. And it's a very strong NMDA receptor modulator. It's very, very nice. The problem is that we're having currently is that ketamine is only available by IV and injection, right? And it actually has poor bioavailability. When I say the word bioavailability, that means when I actually take it by mouth, you do not actually get much of it in your blood, right? But when we went in and put it sublingually under your tongue, it was amazing. Very nice. When we went in also and did it with nasal spray, it was very, very good. When we went in and we did it transdermally, locally, it worked very, very nice. Okay? So whenever you guys see ketamine, more than likely, from a compounding pharmacy, you're going to see it in nasal spray. You're going to see it in lozenges. You're going to see it topically. Sometimes it can be mixtured over with some lidocaine that can actually help with the pain locally very nicely, because, hey, I'm just having my hand hurting. I don't really want a lozenge, and then I'll be, you know. So, hey, if the ketamine can cover it topically, we're happy people, right? All right. So this part here has been actually shown that ketamine can work good with opioids, but for CRPS patients, opioids is not the biggest thing working, right? How many people has opioids helping them? I got maybe about 4 hands. And not that it would not be helping you, my lady, not that it would not be helping you guys, but I have a lot of my CRPS patients where they will throw opioids at it and nothing works. All right? The second thing is, they actually shown that when we went in, and the studies has shown that we went in and we gave ketamine, although its half-life is not long, it actually went in and desensitized the nerves. So the pain was not as bad thereafter. So although it is not in high dosage and high concentration in your blood anymore, your nerves did not hurt as bad. And that's why we would do an infusion. And then once we do an infusion, we'll come back and maybe give it a boost. And then from there on, it keeps on going like this, and you would have some remission in between infusions. Okay? So the beautiful thing about ketamine, that not just that it did help right now, but for some people, after high dosing in infusions, and after longer infusions, usually we do about 10 days, 5 and 5, all right? It has shown to actually put a lot of our patients in remission, and then we come back and boost, and then we come back and boost it. So that's why when we started working with FSI, we're starting seeing patients that, let's say, came from Utah, started moving to Florida, because the remission was very good and it was too expensive to travel back and forth. So what they did is they actually moved close to the infusion center, and then they would come in for their boosters and so on, and Florida is not a half bad state to move to, right? Give me a yes, please. All right. Anyway, appreciate the enthusiasm, guys. So anyway, so from there on, ketamine has actually been recognized in the UK, and ketamine infusions has been recognized in the UK and in Holland as a good therapeutic option for management of CRPS. All right, and then, just like I said, the study has shown that acute analgesic effects of ketamine outlasted the expected half-life of a drug. Who knows what a half-life is? All right, very nice. All right, so for those that don't know what a half-life is, we're going to use this throughout our presentation. Okay, a half-life is the time that it takes your body to clear half of the amount of medicine that's in your bloodstream out from your blood. Meaning, if I say, let's say that CBD has a half-life of 9 hours. If I give you 50 milligrams at 1 p.m., at 10 p.m., I should only have 25 milligrams of CBD inside of your blood. That's called the first-rate reaction, meaning, let's say that Jim actually did charge for this, right? And every time you cross that door, right, you had to pay Jim. But then you run out of money, right? So Jim says, okay, no problem. What I'm going to do is I'm only going to take half of what you have in your pocket every single time. So if you had $10, right, you went out, you came in, he'll take 5. You went down, you came in, all right, that 5, he's like, okay, give me 2.5. Went out and came in, you would have $1.25. All right? So theoretically, you will never ever have 0, because you're always taking half and half and half and half and half. And that's how our body clears medicine. All right? Fair enough so far? So it might go down to undetectable, but what it does it with, practically with your liver and the liver enzymes, it goes in and actually takes half of whatever that is over that period of time. Fair enough? So although ketamine, the half-life of it was not that long, we have actually seen suppression of neural sensitization in those pain circuits, meaning that, hey, it wasn't that bad. And that's why people moved. That's why people came closer to the center. Now, so with that being said, once they actually go to the center, once you go out, what do you get to actually maintain your pain? Right? We said that as a capsule, it's not really that strong. It does have some bioavailability, but it's not huge. So what do? We actually put it under your tongue in a nice lozenge, dissolves within 5 minutes, and you can actually feel the relief. You can actually put it in a cream, as we said. You can actually put it in a nasal spray. Fair enough so far? All right. Now, let's go to another NMDA receptor, dextromethorphan. Now, dextromethorphan has been one of those good but controversial medicines. Why is it controversial? How many people heard about a dextro high? Right. Very good. Who heard about Skittles before? No? Yes, Skittles? Very good. I want to know how you heard about Skittles. But practically, dextromethorphan can be abused over the counter because it did actually give, how can I say this, a state of, I'm not going to say high as much, but we're going to go with this whole euphoria, kind of high, kind of like, all right? And that's why high school students did go in and actually abuse it in quercetin HB. Who heard about quercetin HBP? Right. So quercetin has chlorpheniramine. Chlorpheniramine is an antihistamine that does not raise your blood pressure. Okay? And then I wanted something that actually helped you with the cough. Right? So we added dextromethorphan to it. But then I did not want to give it to you over a long period of time, or give it to you like 5-6 times a day, or 4 or 5 times a day. So they put a good amount of dextromethorphan in there. It was a red tablet, right, that looked like a Skittle. So that's why, although it does not have pseudoephedrine, you guys would walk into CVS or Walgreens and you would see it in one of those clear plastic boxes where the pharmacist or somebody has to go in and unlock it. If the area is not nice enough. If the area is nice, that's fine. They can just keep it. Yeah. But other than that, dextromethorphan also has been shown to modulate NMDA, right? The N-methyl D-aspartate receptors in our brain. All right. A brother also that does do that is memantine. Not sure if you guys heard about memantine as Namenda and amantadine. These guys are weaker, but dextromethorphan has shown us better results at higher dosages. Okay, so I'm going to focus for the sake of this presentation on dextromethorphan itself. Now, dextromethorphan itself, all right, is a brother of who? Of codeine. So there is a codeine analog called methorphan. A part that's a little chemical. Whenever you actually have a chemical, it exists in two orientations. One is right and one is left. One is levo and one is dextro. Right is levo, dextro is left. So we found that the D isomer of methorphan, which is an analog of codeine, all right, did not act on the opioid receptors like codeine. But it did actually lower the cough. It did calm down your cough. So that's why we liked it so much. So from there on, methylmorphinan, all right, is technically just the D isomer of the codeine analog of methorphan, and thus we called it dextromethorphan, the D isomer, the dextro isomer of methorphan. All right, I'm sorry, it's a little chemical. Now, the L isomer did actually attach to the opioid receptor, so that's why whenever we actually have methorphan, we actually have to purify it and use the dextro one. And then we've seen from there on that it did actually connect to the PCP channel of the N-methyl deaspartate receptors. Something else that dextromethorphan did do, which we actually use also as an adjunct therapy, it did actually release serotonin. So you guys, whenever you go to your doctor, all right, not a lot of people know this. Before you start on dextromethorphan, make sure you tell your doctor that if you're on an SSRI. An SSRI, practically, all right, you make serotonin, right? Serotonin is your go-go juice, right? Now, what happens is your body releases the serotonin, it gets used within your synapses. The extra amount of serotonin that's in between your synapses, your body's like, wow, man, that's a stimulant. Let me take that back and eat it up. So it goes in and reuptakes that and destroys it. So people that have depression, I need that serotonin. That serotonin is gold. So what we do, we use something like Zoloft, something like Paxil, something like fluoxetine, right? Something like escitalopram, Lexapro, citalopram, Celexa. If any of this stuff actually sounds familiar, you are on an SSRI, a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, where it went in just for the serotonin and told the body, I do not want you to get rid of that extra amount. So now, let me ask you this. If I have a CRPS patient that has been suffering for some time, and then from there on they're an SSRI, and then dextromethorphan went in, stopped the reuptake also of serotonin, and then increased the amount of serotonin being released, what's going to happen? We got something that is not so nice called serotonin syndrome. So that's when you're practically feeling that you literally want to hit your head against the wall. Your blood pressure would raise. Your mouth would get dry. You get a change in mental state. You get a little bit of sweating, fever, cold chills. You get some diarrhea, some nausea, tremors, muscle rigidity. So it is very important, if you guys are considering being on dextromethorphan, and this is the part for the pharmacist here, that you notify the doctor, notify the pharmacist that, hey, I'm on an SSRI. So you guys better be monitored. The patient has to be monitored. I always ask and I always say, hey, if you're an SSRI, I'm not saying you should not be on dextromethorphan. You can. You might need the extra help too. I have nothing wrong with that, but monitor your blood pressure for me. Make sure you're not jumping on stuff that you usually didn't jump on. You're not losing your cool more than normal. That was not funny. That's okay, and then that is a good question, actually. Actually, it wasn't too funny. But anyway, the part that I'm trying to say here is dextromethorphan can be great for my patients because it did actually help take the patients down, the pain down. Serotonin, although it is not really proven that SSRIs themselves do actually help with pain, but serotonin does attenuate nerve pain. So it's an all-in-good drug, but we do want to watch out for it. We do want to watch out whenever you're on it. Now, what I'm going to go through is some side effects, right? Nausea, vomiting, constipation, drowsiness. Here, I'm going to focus on those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those 5. Drowsiness, dizziness, sedation, confusion, and nervousness. So, dextromethorphan was the reason why we joined Dr. Hannah. Or rather, Dr. Hannah reached out to us for that reason, and that's why we feel blessed. There was a pharmacy that started compounding with Dr. Hannah, all right? And they saw how good dextromethorphan was, and those 60 capsules all of a sudden went from 90 to 110 bucks, right? It's an increase of 20 bucks, not so big, but however, when it's $110 plus your ketamine lozenges, which they were charging somewhere around $4 per lozenge for, right? And then from there on, plus the LDN, that patient walked out with somewhere in the vicinity of about $500 out of that pharmacy door. So the patient had to choose between their bills and they had to choose between their medicine. So Dr. Hanna was pulling his hair. And lucky enough, although I know him personally, he did not know that we had our own pharmacy. And I had a friend working in there, and then he's like, man, compounding pharmacy, man, I don't know what to do, and the patient is not getting on the protocol. The patient will go pick and choose. You know what, I'll have the lozenges, but don't give me the Dextra. No, you know what, I'll have the Dextra this month, and I'll go on once a day instead of twice a day, and then I'm gonna go get the LDN, but not this. It was a mess. So they reached out to us, and then we looked at the price of Dextra for us to make, and it wasn't that huge. So we cut that price literally 60% off. We gave them the 60 capsules for $40. And from there on, it became reasonable. And I started seeing as a pharmacist what Dextra is doing for my patients. When we started doing Dextra, Dr. Hanna used to do it actually just dextromethorphan, 50 milligrams. Then as soon as the patient started actually taking it and they were happy, they came to me and they're like, man, I feel like I got hit by a train. I take it and I'm then like, whoa. So I went and spoke to Dr. Hanna, and then we tried it with some patients, and we did actually make a sustained release dosing. So the next time you actually think about getting dextromethorphan, don't ever get dextromethorphan in immediate release formulation. Always ask for sustained release dosing. Because my patients that got hit by a train when they started on the dextromethorphan now tell me, you know what? It's somewhat manageable. It is not as bad as it used to be. Maybe I'm tired. Something else for the dosing of Dextra, guys. Whenever you start on dextromethorphan, again, you will feel kind of groggy, kind of like you're coming out of a hangover, kind of a feel, because the dosage is high. A regular dosage of dextromethorphan over the counter is 10, 15, and 20. All right, right here we're starting at 50, 100, 150, and then we can go up to 200 3 times a day. BID, by the way, whenever you're reading your prescription, BID means twice a day, TID means 3 times a day. So those patients could not take it even once. So what we did, we started a protocol where you start 3 days just at bedtime, then you go ahead and add a morning dose. Then from there on, you can go ahead and actually add a midday dose over 3-day intervals. And that worked good for our patients. So dextromethorphan, as good as it is of a medication, if nobody counsels you on it, if you hear about somebody that's taking it and they had very bad side effects, tell them, hey, just get in a sustained release formulation. Start over 3-day intervals where you actually increase your dose. Just at bedtime for 3 days, twice a day for 3 days, then we can build up to the 3 times a day. But from there on, the serotonin release was very nice for my patients, right? You give them that pick-me-upper. And at the same time, the pain relief was very, very nice. And it was not ketamine. Because ketamine works on the same ideology. Ketamine also works on the NMDA receptors. Right? But ketamine is way stronger than Dextra. So this is why what Dr. Hanna did at that point was, okay, I'll start them with the ketamine, we'll do the infusions and so on, and then they can go home with the Dextra. The Dextra can actually help throughout the day. Now, other than this, Dextra has been very good for my patients. Eventually, my patients can function, go to work, go to school, and they work fine with it without any problems. Before I move on, any questions about Dextra? Yes, ma'am.
I've been taking NyQuil every night for about a year and a half to treat myself with dextromethorphan, and that's 30 milligrams, adding in an additional dose during the day if needed, when needed, etc. Someone like me that has to make the transition between that to go to the pharmaceutical grade of 50, is it something that I would be able to handle going from 30 to 50? Or would I be more likely to be able to handle it well because I've been doing this for a year and a half? Or is my someone who, no, stick to NyQuil? What would be your sense?
No, very good question, actually. Very good question. Yes. I would rather they actually do not stick to NyQuil. Because guess what? What does NyQuil have? And what else? It has doxylamine. Doxylamine is an antihistamine. I love antihistamines, but not for every day. Can help you dry up your nose, but definitely not for every day, because other than that, I will start seeing your blood pressure starting to go up, your mouth starting to dry, you're starting to be dry as a bone. I would lose turgor with you if you overdose, if you get sick, and the NyQuil is no longer covering it. So now you take an antihistamine in the morning and an antihistamine at night, plus a Dextra in the middle of the day. I don't want that. So yes, you can actually tolerate it. If my naive patient can tolerate Dextra, and you have been on it already, yes, you will be more than fine, my lady. Question, guys?
Is there a tolerance that builds up on to that Dextra?
Quite honestly, I haven't seen tolerance on the Dextra. However, I did see that we needed to go up for some of my patients. My patients are all over the spectrum, right? Where they have CRPS in their shoulder, they have it in the foot, right? Or they have it in one of their hands. And then I have patients that have full body. So I've seen patients go as high as 200 milligrams 3 times a day, all right? And I had patients that were just more than fine with the 50 milligrams TID 3 times a day still. So that goes up 4 times the dose. But I didn't per se see a patient that started on a 50, then from there on, like 3-4 months later, went up to 100. Yeah. If they ramped up within the first 3 months, where he's like, good, but a little bit more, good, but a little bit more. And then once we got it, we got it. That's it. Cool? Let's go ahead and actually switch gears. Naltrexone. Now, Naltrexone is very interesting, and I like Naltrexone because, one, it's dirt cheap, right? You can actually get 30 capsules for $30. If you can actually get 3 months supply, you can get a 3-month supply for maybe somewhere around $70, which is not bad. You can actually save some money on Naltrexone. All right, the dosage is low. The side effects is very, very low and mild. All right, and most of everything that we've been seeing through it, I'm not going to say miraculous, but I'm going to say that it made us happy. It put a grin on my face. Why? Naltrexone originally is a medication that actually takes people off of opioids, right? And then we found out that when we put people on opioids at 50 milligrams, that's a regular dose of Naltrexone, by the way, guys, it starts at 50 milligrams. When we put patients on 50 milligrams going 2 and 3 times a day, we found that those people's energy was, right? And then from there on, we'd start lowering the dose as we're weaning them off of opioids and then weaning them off of the Naltrexone. And as the levels of Naltrexone went down in their blood, we actually found that their allergies got better. We actually found that they had more energy. We actually found that they went around with their let's say, with their Crohn's and so on, saying, hey, I didn't have a flare in so long, God knows what. So what we have seen is that their nerve pain got better, more energy, while at the same time their allergies got better. And then a guy over in New York called Dr. Bahar, he went and shook his head and started literally scratching, and he's like, what's up with that? So he started putting HIV patients on it, right? Remember, HIV is an autoimmune disease, and he started with 50 milligrams. And he noticed that the amount of endorphins started to increase. And that's not something that we're actually used to as much. We're used to that the amount of endorphins would actually get lowered by Naltrexone at high doses. So at regular doses, Naltrexone will go in and actually suppress your endorphins and metenkaphalins. I will go over what a metenkaphalins is in a second. But when we gave it at lower dosages, we found out that Naltrexone will go briefly and lower your endorphins. And then by positive feedback mechanism, a positive feedback is when your body doesn't like something that you suppressed it with. So he's like, man, I'm going to give you a punch. Man, you suppress my endorphins, I'm going to flood it. And that's exactly what the body does. So the body will go at a lower dose of naltrexone of, let's say, a 4.5, which is about 10th of that dose. A 4.5, by the way, is our sweet little spot. At a 10th of that dose, you will see that the endorphins would dip just a tad because this naltrexone did go in and dip it down, and then the body will go in and flood the system with endorphins. And if anybody knows anything about endorphins, that's kind of like your runner's high, right? I'm happy. Also, what they found with naltrexone, which was really, really interesting, that it did go in and actually release something called the opioid growth factor, OGF, opioid growth factor, which is the MET5 enkephalins, the metenkephalins. All right? And this guy was actually responsible for good cell replication. So people are actually starting to heal from some injuries, which is interesting. Okay. All right. What we have noticed also, not only that it did actually release your oh, by the way, you guys know that endorphins is your natural opioid? Does anybody know that? So endorphins is actually a type of opioids. But synthetic opioids went in at really high dosages and did actually irritate something called the glial cells. Does anybody know what a glial cell is? Glial cell is packing cells, packing. So nobody knew what glial cells did. All right, we just knew that it was all over our brain and all over our spinal cord. And they found that it went in and actually wrapped your nerve synapses. So that's called the microglia. So if really I want to take a look at this, those little guys would be all over this and will be covering this, and you cannot see from them and the whole 9 yards. They would be all over the place. They're literally packing your nerves, covering your nerves. And nobody knew what glial cells did, other than it was just packing stuff. But then we found out that the glial cells was really something that was standing there waiting for something wrong to happen. So it was kind of like innate immunity. It was waiting for something wrong to happen. Once that happens, it actually did release substances that irritated and inflamed your nerves. Right? So where the heck does naltrexone come into all of this? So the glia, for it to go in and irritate your nerves, once it irritated your nerves, it went in and released pro-inflammatories and cytokines and chemokines, a lot of substances that went in and irritated your nerves, right? But it did get that signal from something called the TLR4, toll-like receptors, all right? So these guys practically are there to be, if you can call it that way, to be the guy with the bells, like, hey, the enemy's coming, the enemy's coming, the enemy's coming. So the TLR4, once there is actually a problem, once there is a bacterial infection, once there is damage, it will go and fly off. And then from there on, it would go in and make the glia release all the cytokines and all the pro-inflammatory responses, and it will irritate your nerves and the whole 9 yards. And we found that synthetic opioids did actually irritate the TLR4s. But when I went in by naltrexone and I blocked it, because remember, naltrexone is there to block the opioid receptor. That's to take people off of opioids, right? So when I went in and blocked that, I calmed down the TLR4, and when I calmed these guys down, these guys calmed down. And when these guys calmed down, there was no longer inflammation of your nerve. So LDN at that point went in and actually relaxed the glia that was covering your nerve so it doesn't irritate and it doesn't get inflamed. You get what just happened? So at lower dosages, it does this perfectly. What happens when you guys feel sick? Do you want to be around people? No? You don't want to be around people, right? You want to be just somewhere, sit in a room and relax. Nobody will bother you. We found this in animals. They called it the sickness effect. And what was happening here, your amount of endorphins would go down. And when your endorphins went down when you were sick, you actually attracted back. And animals did this so it doesn't infect other animals. And we are programmed just exactly the same way. So when I went in and released endorphins, I actually negated that. So that's another thing that LDN can actually help with. So when we went in and went in and actually released endorphins and calmed down the TLR, we no longer had that glial irritation. No longer did your nerve go in haywire. And if we can say that the CRPS does have, which is very, very probable, and that's what we're looking at currently, that CRPS does have an autoimmune response, and I went in and modulated that, right? And I released endorphins, and your glia is no longer irritated, we're kind of cutting the tree at the root. So that's why LDN can be beautiful, can be great. LDN also can be used for fatigue syndrome because of the release of the endorphins. Can be used as an adjunct for people that actually have depressions. The side effects are very, very small. Let's talk about side effects real quick. If you are on opioids, do you think you should be on LDN? If I tell you that Naltrexone goes in, yanks your opioid out, and it competes for its receptor, you should not be on LDN. However, we can start you on something called ultra low dose Naltrexone. Ultra low dose of that Naltrexone. And they actually found that ultra low dose Naltrexone went in, and because of the release of endorphins, which remember it's your natural opioid, that actually enhanced your opioids. So if I give you 2 micrograms, I'm not talking milligrams, I'm talking 2 micrograms of LDN, it actually did release endorphins along with your opioid. Right? I think your question had, your phone had a question. It's all good. All right. So, but for now, let's not worry about ultra low dose. Let's just focus on low dose Naltrexone. So when you go to your doctor back, all right, I want you to ask for LDN if you're not on any opioids currently. This is one of the cheapest and one of the best medicines that my patients can be on. It helps attenuate their autoimmune diseases. What we have seen also, and I've seen this in one of my Sunday school kids. Who heard about Contrave? Anybody heard about Contrave, the medicine? Right. So Contrave is practically low-dose Naltrexone paired with bupropion in order to take people's cravings off of food. Right, because remember, we used to use bupropion under a brand name Zyban to get people off of the smoking, right? To take people off of smoking. So that helped us big time, right? So they paired LDN, which did actually release endorphins, all right, along with the bupropion, which went in and took the cravings out, and they made it a good weight loss medicine. I lost 50 pounds on it myself. I got diagnosed with Graves, and they suppressed the heck out of my thyroid. I know you think I would look big now. See me 5 months ago. Like seriously. I was eating like a pig, and I couldn't stop. Thank you. So from there on, I myself felt what LDN can do. People that have hypothyroidism under the name of Hashimoto's is autoimmune hypothyroidism. Once I actually went in and attenuated the autoimmune response, guess what? The thyroid went back into making its own T3 and T4. So people that have Hashimoto's, and that's the last thing I'm going to tell you guys about warnings about LDN. If you have Hashimoto's, you cannot start right away on a 4.5. I want to start you very low, maybe a half, a 1.5, but we do not start 4.5 right away. Because what's going to happen is my patients on Hashimoto's, all right, will go into hyperthyroidism with their thyroid medicine. So that's the last thing I leave you guys with LDN as a warning. So remember, dextromethorphan worried about what? SSRIs, exactly. Something like Zoloft, Paxil, citalopram, and so on. All right? LDN, I worry about people that have opioids and people that have Hashimoto's. We need to start on a low dose. Very nice. Thank you, guys. The last thing I want to turn you guys for LDN, I want you guys to go to ldnresearchtrust.org, ldnresearchtrust.org. That's a very good institution. We actually support it as a pharmacy. We are listed as one of their LDN pharmacies. I wanted to be there in June, but I could not be because we're opening a new store. So I'm actually getting to be live with them. I'm gonna watch them live. I'm not interacting, but I'm watching them live. But they are very, very good. You cannot imagine how many things you can actually see with LDN. It has been very, very helpful for my patients. A lot of good conditions that it has helped. The last thing about my Sunday school kid, he's an overweight autistic. I started him on the Contrave. And then I noticed that his speech was not as good, and then I'm like, what the heck? I looked at bupropion. Bupropion was not too bad. Bupropion had nothing to do with it. So I went in an LDN, and I'm like, hey man, just autism. And they found that there is some markers that shows that opioid receptors did actually relate to autism. So when I went in and blocked these, guess what? It did actually help with autistic people. So all that I ask, I'm not trying to turn you to the company itself, so we're not promoting anybody. By the way, don't take any money from them. We're actually, if we can give them, that would be great. But it is a lot of good research that I want you guys to go there and actually read up. Okay? Yes, sir.
So, he's one of our sponsors, but will you try to beat any other compounding pharmacy's price?
Is that a question?
Yes.
Yes. Well, let me say it this way. If it's too expensive, do your homework. More than likely there's somebody that's cheaper. And try to ask your doctor who they're dealing with. The reason why we can afford to do what we're doing with Dr. Hannah is because we have that in volume. So do not just go looking out in the wild. Because that pharmacist, by the way, all right, is going to have to buy that Naltrexone, which is $275 for 5 grams. 5 grams. That's a sixth of an ounce. A sixth of an ounce is $275 just for us to buy it to make your one prescription. So a good question to answer that question, actually, thank you, Jim. Go to somebody that your doctor is probably dealing with and that is actually doing volume. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay,
you had a question.
that's fine. I just want to say that we actually believe so much in LDN that we're sponsoring a trial at Stanford with Sean Mackey for women with CRPS, looking at that test safety and efficacy. But Mena will be in the back if you wanted to ask him a question. We're going to go with our next speaker.
Do you mind if we go over CBD for 2 minutes?
2 minutes?
2 minutes. I'll do CBD in 2 minutes, real quick. I'm sorry. I should have watched my time. Now, CBD, real quick. What the heck? Right? What the heck? So, real quick, the cannabis plants has more than one strain, all right? I want you guys to actually focus on something called cannabis sativa, sativa. The sativa grows into 2 arms. One of them is marijuana and the other one is hemp. Very good. So from there on, they found that CBD, THC, CBN, CBCA, CBGA, CBDA, all of these guys were small little compounds that was actually found in marijuana and in hemp. All right? And they found that all of them had some good properties, with the emphasis on two. The first one is on THC, it works in your brain and your spinal cord. The second one is on CBD, that actually works very nice for inflammation response. Very nice for inflammation response. Also, it does, when they found out that CBD worked well for patients for anxiety, they started actually using it against THC, because when you start using THC, you get that little bit of paranoia in the beginning. So you will go walk into a dispensary and you'll find that they're actually selling you a hybrid product, THC with CBD. And what they're saying here is, I'm going to give you the THC, but to balance that high, to balance that anxiety, I'll give you some CBD with it. So sure enough, the Farm Bill of 2014 and the one 2018 that just passed, they said, okay, all right, so if CBD is not addictive, okay, and at the same time it helps with a lot of people, I give you two rules. You follow it and we can make it over the counter. The first rule, it cannot come from marijuana, because we actually have international treaties with countries that marijuana cannot just cross our borders like this. It's an illicit plant that has to be purified before it can be given to the public, or it has to be legalized in that state. Okay? Second rule, it cannot have more than 0.3 per 100 parts, 0.3% of THC, which is the hallucinogen part of the phytocannabinoids. Fair enough? First rule, not from marijuana. Second rule, less than 0.3%. Very good. Now, CBD and THC and all these guys are called phyto, means plant, cannabinoids of the cannabis plant. So phytocannabinoids are chemicals found in the cannabis plant. Fair enough? All right. The small names for that is called terpenes. It's called terpenes. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 products of CBD currently in the market. 5 products of CBD currently in the market over the counter. The first thing is a whole plant extract. That's when they literally go in and take the pulp out of the oil. So that has traces, CBD, THC, CBC, CBG alpha, and so on. A bunch of stuff together. So that practically have all the phytocannabinoids in it with no concentration or emphasis on THC or CBD, and it cannot have more than 0.3% of THC. Fair enough so far? That's the most crude form. That should be your cheapest form that you can find in the market. All right? The whole plant extract. You would flip that bottle and look in the back. The active ingredient is hemp full plant extract. Fair enough? All right. Next thing, Broadspectrum full plant extract. Broadspectrum is new just to the last 18 months. Broadspectrum, they said, okay, we'll take those products. You guys don't like THC, I'll take it out. So a whole plant extract that actually takes out the THC is called the Broadspectrum whole plant extract. Okay? Then we will go with CO2 isolates, with CO2 extraction, with carbon dioxide extraction, and we isolate that CBD out into powder and isolate it on its own. And we use that in M-Care because Dr. Hannah was having a problem. Patients are going buying these CBD products that has THC, shows up in their blood, and he cannot treat them anymore. In Florida Medicare and Medicaid, you cannot have THC in your blood unless you have a medical card, right? So he asked me to go looking for something that doesn't have THC. So we carry isolates for that reason. So if you do have a pain management doctor that don't like you, I didn't finish, that doesn't like you to have THC, all right, get an isolate. That's an isolate. That means I isolated that CBD out. It's only CBD. Fair enough? All right. After that came up an ideology that literally said that, I'm almost done, that literally said there is something called an entourage effect. The entourage effect is when they said that the phytocannabinoids, when they put in with the concentrated CBD, that 10 milligrams of CBD acted like it was a 17 or a 20. So at that point, they're like, okay, let's go and isolate the CBD, infuse it back into the whole plant extract. Can you get me Ricardo, please? Ricardo, please turn it back on. Infuse it back into that whole plant extract, and you would have something called a full spectrum. That means it has a high emphasis on CBD, a good big concentration of CBD, but it would have also with it the small little phytocannabinoids. So that's called a full spectrum product. Does it work well? Heck yeah. Does it have some THC? Heck yeah. Okay. I like full spectrum products. We don't carry them in M-Care for a reason. Again, because of the lab problem. Number two, when I raise the dosing of my patient, sometimes I need to raise the dose. My patients are all across the spectrum. So when I raise that dose, my patients do get buzzed. So what I do is I use an isolate, and then I use a whole plant extract, which is dirt cheap on the side. If I raise the dose of the CBD and they want the rest of the spectrum, I give them that on the side. So you do not have to raise the whole dose of the phytocannabinoids and the CBD together. You can raise the CBD and keep just a low dose of the phytocannabinoids. Cool? And then the last and most advanced is when they went in, they got the full spectrum product and they took out the THC. And they called that a broad spectrum product. And this is where the market is going now. This is expensive still, but it is a good product that has all the phytocannabinoids with a concentration of CBD and 0 THC. All right, so the first thing, whole plant extract, most crude should be cheap. If you pay high for it, somebody's messing with you. Okay? Then they extract the THC from the whole plant extract. All right, they call it Broadspectrum. After that, they isolate the CBD. That's what isolate is, just pure CBD. And then from there on, a full spectrum that has all the little phytocannabinoids with a CBD concentration, including THC, then a broad spectrum CBD, high concentration CBD, and the small phytocannabinoids. And thank you very much, guys.